Cause we want retribution. Oh yeah, we want retribution. Oh yeah, we want retribution. Oh yeah, we want retribution. Yeah, we ran out of patience. Boil your love with the cold hard hatred. I can feel the vibration. Feet in the streets, it's a new sensation. I wanna break faces on the pavement. I wanna make greatness look complacent. Adrenaline awakened.
Hospital Reporters, Pride and Dignity. Stop the New World Order. Welcome to Panmo TV, and welcome to this video, which is going back to my roots a little bit, or being a bit nostalgic. It's a long time since I've done this style of video, which is basically me in my studio area, not my fake studio area on StreamYard. And also not using my webcam and microphone, it's just using my camcorder on a tripod. It's been a long time since I've done a video like that, and I thought I'll go back to that old style just for once. I think I'll do that, and we're going to talk about a particular book that I actually am reviewing. Now, I talked about this book. I actually did mention this book in a previous video, and I suggested that some of you read it. And I think if you have read it, you'll probably get more out of this particular video than if you haven't. But I'll just get the angle right. That's it. There we go. If you haven't, but this is the book anyway. It is No Easy Day by Mark Owen. It's the #1 bestseller. The Navy SEAL mission that killed Osama bin Laden. A blistering first-hand account by The Sun. And there's the spine there, and you can pause and read the back if you like. There you go. This is a book by someone called Mark Owen. It's a very controversial book. Not as controversial as it should be, but it is still controversial even within the sort of mainstream field of things. Now, Mark Owen is not his real name. The author wrote under a fake name. Now, he has been doxxed since people know who he is. I'm not going to mention his real name on this video because the guy has family, and yeah, he could, you know, despite everything I'm going to say about this particular subject, there is a genuine threat to him from people who believe the official story. And you know, he's got family, and I don't want him to get hurt, and you know, things like that. So I'm not going to use his real name. But you can find it out quite easily. But anyway, this is No Easy Day. Now, this is something that he wrote. Now, this Mark Owen is a former member of the US Special Forces called the Navy SEALs. Specifically SEAL Team 6. It's also called the Green Team, or the Naval Warfare Special Development Group. It's its official name. And he had to clear it with several lawyers. Now, he didn't go to DOPSA like David Grush did, but he did get it cleared with a solicitor who's experienced in these things to make sure there's no classified information in it about technical details and things like that, and tactics. He also has changed the names of some of the people in the story, in this narrative, including his own, to protect them. And now the book is quite short actually. I read it basically. I read half of it on the way to my New Year trip, my New Year adventure in Dorset, and half of it on the way back. Basically, it's quite a short book. Despite the fact it's quite thick, it's like big print. You see, it's like got quite big print, so it's deceptively, it looks longer than it is. Now basically, I'd say the first half of the book you could read it if you're interested in that sort of thing. If you're interested in the details of special warfare and things like that, you can read it. But generally, I'd say you could skip it. Really, I mean, it gives some interesting background about the author. It talks about his childhood. He mentions he comes from Alaska, and he used to go out in the wilderness with his dad and things like that. And he got quite interested. He wanted excitement and adventure in his life. He read a book about special forces, and he said he wanted to be a special forces soldier. And so he went on to join SEAL Team 6. Another thing that's interesting is he talks about, and that's another reason to read the first half, I think, is that he said something that was quite surprising actually. It quite surprised me. He describes the culture and community and the camaraderie of the Special Forces community in the United States military. And excuse me, I'm going to sneeze. And believe it or not, I mean, it surprised me, because despite the enormous difference in our roles and our social standing, of course, it rang a bell with me with my experience of hospital portering. And I think the reason for this is because it is an exclusively male dominium, which is a very rare thing these days. I mean, any all-male institution is being attacked by feminists and shut down, and mixed with women and things like this. I mean, I'm even having to fight this within the ufology field, but you know, I think that's the reason there's that similarity. You know, it's just like the particular kind of culture and community. There's that similarity that I detect. I think feminists use very patronising language to describe this sort of thing. They say male bonding and bromance, things like that, which is like really, it's typical of the feminists actually to belittle it that way. But I understand that. I mean, even though I should say the hospital portering is not exclusively male, about 5% or so of women. 5% of hospital porters are women, but and some of them are pretty good. I had a female shift partner once in A&E, but it is still like a very much a male space. So that's where I think I got that sort of impression from it. Another thing I noticed in the first half of the book, and I'm going a bit off topic here, so I'll come back to the main reason for this video soon. But another reason another thing I found out about it was. Another thing that struck a chord with me, that the author talks about something called good idea fairies. Now, these are basically bureaucrats who shove their oar in and tell the old hands, the people who do the work on the sort of front line, telling them what to do and giving them good ideas, so to speak. Now, this happens as well. This is exactly the same thing in hospital portering, and I'll bring this up again on the St. Theo's video in June. In June, when it's St. Theo's Day. You know. The people, you know, very often being in the hospital portering service, on the cliff face, on the hands, on the actual doing the actual work, you develop good ideas about how to do something for your experience, for your expertise. Getting them cleared at the departmental head level is not difficult, especially if the departmental head, the head porter, is a good appointee. But then before you know it, some overqualified, underworked fool from administration, usually somebody a lot younger than you and earning a lot more money and has far more qualifications and far less experience, will stick their nose in and try and make suggestions. They will make suggestions. And seeing as these people carry so much more authority, usually, you know, it's difficult to ignore them. And I think anyone in any large institution, especially a state bureaucracy, will find themselves in that position. If you're like you're an experienced old hand, you're going to be bossed about by these morons. These good, I mean, the author calls them good idea fairies. That's what they use. That's the term they use in the U.S. military. We use different words. I mean, we called them boy wonders. That's a term we often use for them if they were male. And when they were not exclusively male by any means. There was lots of them were female, in which case we had far ruder terms for them. But they were absolutely infuriating. And of course, the real reason they did what they did was to justify their own existence. Administration in state bureaucracies, essentially, it's a parasitic phenomenon, and they only get what they want, which is their big salary and things like that, by being seen to be useful, even when they're useless. So yes, the boy wonders, you know. And of course, and sometimes I should point out that the good idea fairies, the boy wonders, their ineptitude can kill. And a good example, I've talked about this before, is the West Wing jumper. Wow, the West Wing at the hospital is a big open space, an atrium, like a shopping centre. Looks very nice. When as always, it looks nicer than it actually is. Everything's made to look good at hospitals these days, even though some things, even when they were useless, they're like they can be absolutely incompetent and ridiculous and inefficient and backward. But as long as they look good, that's all that matters. And what happens is there's this atrium with these floor levels which open to, the lifts go up a flight, and then they come out onto an open parapet with a 5-foot glass barrier to prevent people falling off. And on each level there are it goes up from lower ground 1 to level 2. Now we porters said you need to enclose that. And they said, we don't need, and then the boy wonder said, well, we don't need to enclose this. We don't need to enclose it. 5 foot 2 inches is the regular height, which is considered safe to prevent people accidentally falling off. I know this because I've got a degree in ergonomic employment, architectural coordination. And you don't, you're just a porter. So we said, well, the thing is, it's not. We did try to explain to them. We said, look, it's not the people falling off by accident you've got to worry about. It's the people who fall off on purpose. He said, what are you talking about? How do you know this? And I said, all right, I don't have a degree in anything at all, but I have spent 23 years with my head up my arse pulling these people off windowsills on level 7. And then the boy wonder said, no, I'm not going to bother. And so they built the atrium on the west wing the way they wanted to. And guess what someone did? Someone went up to level 2. He walked out of his ward, a guy who'd been an inpatient for a long time, very serious state of depression. Got out of his bed, walked to level 2, climbed over the parapet and fell 130 feet to his death on the hard stone floor at the bottom of the atrium. Yep. These idiots kill. They kill with their stupidity and their inability to listen to people who know better, because they think they know it all. Yeah, the Dunning-Kruger effect, I think that's called. Anyway, that's slightly off topic, I suppose. Oops, my camera's wobbling about. I haven't done this. See, I haven't done this kind of filming for a while. As Ronnie Corbett would say, on with the joke. The second half of the book covers what's called Operation Neptune Spear, which took place in May of 2011. What happened was all of SEAL Team 6 got a special assignment. They go into a special meeting inside a skiff. And he describes the skiff quite accurately, actually. We've heard a lot about skiffs lately, about what they're like. They're literally, they're not just a room with a locked door. They have lead screening in the walls to prevent electronic interference. They have like a vacuum gap as well, so that you can't, to prevent acoustic espionage. They're scanned regularly for hidden microphones. They have a double door, things like that. So the skiffs, we're familiar with the skiffs. There's lots of them at the Pentagon, and these guys, the SEAL Team 6, were led into a skiff, and they were then given a briefing of what they were going to do. And what they were going to do is they were going to go and get Osama bin Laden. The CIA had been tracking him for about 15 years, and they weren't sure where he was. Then they managed to find him because they knew some of the people who were working with his network, and they put traces on them, and they eventually led him to this very large compound. It's actually a very grand house in a place called Abbottabad in Pakistan. He said this isn't some like little cave. It's not like he was always meant to be in the Tora Bora caves, do you remember? And they raided the caves and they found nothing. Well, they did find a giant, this like 12-foot guy, which killed a couple of the soldiers, and then they shot the giant. But they didn't find any bin Laden. And so he wasn't living in a nomadic community in the forest or anywhere out the way where he couldn't be found. He was living in a nice posh villa in a very well-to-do part of this town in Pakistan. And he was literally just a few miles from the Pakistan Military Academy as well. And he was wanted in Pakistan. There was a price on his head, but he was in this nice little house with his family and a couple of supporters. And yeah, not in a remote area. And they had drones flying over at high altitude, and they took some photographs, and they saw this guy. This guy used to come out every day, and he used to walk round and round in circles in the garden for several hours. They called him the Pacer, and they think that was him. But the thing is, like, the CIA were not necessary. This is where the story loses a lot of credibility, and it's going to lose some more, I'll tell you. It's not. The CIA were not necessary to give this place notoriety. It was a massive source of local gossip. For example, the dustmen never called there. And according to the drone footage, the people who lived there used to burn their own rubbish in the garden. They used to burn it on a huge bonfire. The local children wouldn't play near the place because if they lost a football over the wall, they'd never get it back. They'd go knock on the door and people would just tell them to go away. Yeah. So, it's interesting that with all the technology the CIA has, drones, spy satellites, electronic surveillance, telephone, radio surveillance, and and interception, and the NSA and all those people, right? It took them 15 years to find him, and when they did find him, he wasn't in a particularly well hidden location. He was in the middle of a town. And so what happened was that on the May the 1st, 2011, there was a raid. There were two helicopters called Chalk 1 and Chalk 2, flew all of SEAL Team 6 from the Jalalabad base in Afghanistan to Abbottabad, and they had like a Chinook with a reinforcements on board, other soldiers, and then also there was like one with a fuel tank, with a tank of fuel in case they needed fuel on the way back. Things started to go wrong. The helicopter Chalk 1 crashed, although no one was hurt luckily, and the pilots blew it up so that it wouldn't fall into enemy hands, although that was a little bit superfluous considering what happened 10 years later. I mean, now hundreds of those helicopters have fallen into enemy hands. They've been given by the Biden administration to the Taliban, so Anyway, they did blow up Chalk 1, and then they ran into the compound and burst into the house. They had to use special explosives to break through the locks on the doors. And they arrested a few people. They shot, I think 3 people got shot. None of SEAL Team 6 were injured badly. And an unnamed member of the squadron actually killed Osama bin Laden on the top floor. And then on page 214, Mark Owen says, where is it? Was it page 214? I just can't see it now. Right, okay. I got the page reference wrong. Anyway, what happens is Mark Owen is the guy who has the job of photographing the body of bin Laden. And they take the body out with them in a bag. They wrap it up in a sack and they carry the body out to the helicopter. But he had to take some photos at the scene, and he said he had an awesome feeling of responsibility, the importance of what he was doing, because he said these photographs may end up being the most watched, most viewed photographs in the entire world. I better make sure I do a good job, so you got the flash settings and everything, the exposure correct. No, they were not the most viewed photos in the world by any means. So they carry a bin Laden out, and then yes, page 305. They managed to get. It was a bit of a hairy getting out. I mean, thing is, they hadn't consulted with the Pakistani government. So when the Pakistan government, was told there are helicopters landing on Abbottabad, they thought it might be Indian insurgents. So they scrambled some F-15s to go and deal with it. Now, luckily the helicopters managed to get out before the F-15s got there. Even though one of them almost ran out of fuel at one point, all the helicopters did return to the US base in Jalalabad. They returned safely with the body of bin Laden. Now, what follows that? There's a scene. There's what follows. This sounds to me. I'll read you a bit of it here. Yeah, it reads a bit like a bad movie. This reads like a very bad movie. There we are. As I climbed out, I could see 3 Army Rangers from the truck, medics, coming to get the body. They'd been tasked with taking it from Jaybad to Bagram, that's another air base. The soldiers were led by a first sergeant I'd worked with in my last rotation. He was still in country, and I got home a month earlier. He was squared away, meaning he was a good guy. And they started to move forward towards the cabin to grab the body, and they said, "No, we got this. We got all the way we went all the way to Pakistan to get him, and we needed to see this thing through." So I grabbed the handle on the body bag and we carried it off the back of the truck. I climbed on the tailgate, and sitting backwards, and I could see everyone else piling out of the CH-47 for a second felt a huge weight being lifted from my shoulders. Everyone made it back safely. When I looked up, the soldier had his hand out with a 17th Ranger Regiment coin in his palm. "You'll be my son's hero for the rest of his life. Congratulations." I nodded. I was really just happy everyone was alive, home and safe. See, it does sound a little like a scene from a bad movie, doesn't it? Now, Then we get to page 305. Now, then there's a scene. Yeah, there's a scene where there's photographs of Bin Laden. Now, Bin Laden was shot through the head. He actually lost a part of his skull, killed instantly. But he was cosmetic. In other words, you could have taken photographs of him for the media, of his face. They could have been touched up a bit and shown for the media. And what's more, so could the rest of the body. But well, those photographs have never been seen. So then they put the Bin Laden body on the floor of the of a hangar, and everyone comes to see it. And this pretty young blonde CIA officer, she weeps and things like that. You know, it is very Roland Emmerich, really. I think, yeah, it is very Roland Emmerich. But at one point he says, "I had no idea if the photos would ever be made public, and frankly I didn't care. That decision was well above my level and out of my control." That sounds a little bit like backfilling, because of course they weren't, were they? And then it says here, and then this is where it gets very, very strange. The intelligence turnover took more than 2 hours. At the front of the hangar and about 30 feet away from the tables, I could see an FBI forensic expert taking DNA samples from Bin Laden's body. As soon as he was finished, the Rangers escorted the body to the USS Carl Vinson for burial. This is the official story that sort of came out. You see, I don't know when this official story came out and why it may have been inserted into this book. But according to this book, it sounds like the decision of what to do with Bin Laden's body had already been made in advance. And this is what we're told. I mean, this is the official story you get now. If you wiki Bin Laden, this is what happened to him. He was flown by helicopter to the USS Carl Vinson, which is an aircraft carrier sailing in the Indian Ocean. And once he was there, they managed to find a member of the crew who was an ordained imam, who conducted a Muslim funeral, after which Bin Laden's body, sorry, my UK column's falling down, after which Bin Laden's body was then thrown into the sea. There was a burial at sea. Right, now this is where it gets a bit strange, because I remember the night Bin Laden died. I mean, for me in the UK, it was like the early hours of the morning after, the 2nd of May. President Obama made an announcement about 10:35 PM Washington time on in the press briefing room, and there was a huge celebration outside in Washington. People coming out of their houses and lighting fireworks and cheering all up and down through the Capitol area. I remember someone came and alerted me and said, "Ben, they got Bin Laden." I said, "What?" This was like about 4 AM, and I was on night shift. And they said, yeah, have a look. And we were watching the news. It was quite quiet, luckily, so we had a chance to watch the news. And then at 6 AM I went home, and I switched on the news as soon as I got home, and I watched an interview on the BBC with an anti-terrorism expert from the US Embassy in London. And he said he knew exactly what was going to happen, because he said this had been planned before. He said what would happen is that Bin Laden's body would be taken to the United States. It would be put on full view for selected members of the press, because cosmetic photographs of it would be published. Because, as I said, you can touch these things up. It's not nice seeing someone who's been shot in that way. I've seen that many times. It's not pleasant, and it's not something I relish. But you know, selected members of the press would be able to see the body, and indeed photographs of it would be published in the mainstream media. And there would be a period of about a week in which this would go on. At the end of that week, Bin Laden's body would be repatriated, and it would be given to the Bin Laden family for burial. That never happened. And I can't find that interview anywhere. I've searched the archives, I can't find it. But I remember seeing, it's not just the Mandela effect. I was sitting there, my daughter had just got up, I was sitting there, we were watching it on the morning of it was the 3rd of May 2011, and I remember it very, very well. And then we hear that no, the body's just been taken to this aircraft carrier and thrown in the sea. And the photographs of Bin Laden's body have never been published. There are some fakes. I mean, there was there are some fakes. There's a fake. There was a very well-known fake that was circulating that a lot of people thought were real. It was published in the media a couple of times. It was a still from a computer game. We've got to bear in mind that the FBI forensic analysis had not been done. The DNA specialist had taken specimens from the body, blood samples, things like that, put a cotton bud up the nose, stuff like that. Right? He'd done that. And these were going to be taken back to Washington DC to be analysed, but that analysis had not yet been done. No coroner's report had been issued. We didn't even know if the DNA evidence would actually be valid. Would it survive the journey? I mean, DNA evidence, DNA specimens don't always survive. Sometimes something goes wrong and they get lost. There's a million other reasons why you might need that body. You might keep the body, not just for publicity's sake, like I said, for the media, but for the sake of for the legal situation. Bin Laden had to be proved dead. He had to be proven to be dead. Yeah, immediately the burial was almost instantaneous. They took the body to the USS Carl Vinson, said a few prayers, and chucked him in the sea. That doesn't make sense at all. It makes no sense at all. Oh, then so the rest of this book is just like a home for tea and medal session. It's funny, they meet the president, and they meet President Obama and Biden, and who was his vice at the time. And Mark Owen describes Biden as being like your drunk uncle at Christmas, and I thought that was quite amusing because since 2011 his intoxication has got far worse. And he says the author wanted to set the record straight. This is what he says. He says this: I want to set the record straight. By writing this book, he says, I want to set the record straight. He says this at the end. Yeah, here's the epilogue. He said, I spent over a decade of my life sacrificing for this job and country, long period spent away from family, and he explains how he believes that the true story of this situation has never ever been told. Well, I dispute it's even been told here, but he wants to set the record straight. He's fallen out with a lot of the Special Forces community over this. A lot of them have turned against him because of this. And well, one could wonder why that, what's really going on there. But anyway, he's not. You see, they're not supposed to talk about what they do. The Navy SEALs. They're supposed to keep it quiet. They're never supposed to take personal glory or publicity for what they do. And this, I think, is why he's fallen out with some of them. Or there may be other reasons for those who are more in the know why he's fallen out with them. Or maybe it was intentional that this book be written. However, this book was published 2012, just after this happened. But he has said things like he's donated most of the royalties of the book to service charities. But I mean, the whole situation is, as I said, there's so many contradictions and there's so many flaws in the official story. The contradiction of the man who was interviewed from the embassy saying they'd already planned what they wanted to do with Bin Laden's body and it was totally different. There was the fact that they needed to keep the body for legal purposes. I mean, if the police investigate a murder and they dig, if you get killed and someone kills you and they dig you up from a pile of earth in the woods, they don't just take his fingerprints and chuck him away, cremate him. They keep the body as a silent witness, to quote the TV series. It's essential, it's evidence, it's forensic evidence. Bin Laden's body would have been needed for that. But then they just chuck the body in the sea. I mean, maybe it could be the fact that this is actually the third time Osama bin Laden has been killed. This is a bit strange. Now, his death was first reported in 2002 in an Egyptian newspaper. Apparently he died of kidney failure, and he did suffer from that, and he hadn't had dialysis for a very long time, and eventually he succumbed to his illness. He was also shot in 2007. He was murdered by a British agent called Omar Sheikh. As reported by Benazir Bhutto, the former Prime Minister of Pakistan, in an interview with David Frost. It's very interesting to watch that. Now, don't watch the YouTube version because it's all distorted to try and cover up what's happening. There's a distortion that's been inserted onto the recording. I noticed that. If you watch the version on YouTube, watch the one on Daily Motion where it's intact and she says it quite clearly. Bhutto herself was assassinated a short time later. She was shot dead. I wonder if there's a coincidence. Interesting how David Frost doesn't bat an eyelid. He doesn't sort of say, "What did you say? What did you say? Did you say something about murdered Osama bin Laden? Say that again?" He doesn't. It's like he knows not to say anything. Maybe he's got an earpiece and someone said, "David, don't react, don't react." I suppose so. The question is the question. I mean, there are some ugly questions keep raising their ugly heads over this issue. So, for example, I mean, I suppose you could ask yourself, why was it necessary to mythologise Osama bin Laden's death in 2011? Why? I mean, obviously he was already dead, but why was it necessary to sort of like make it a public thing in 2011, to turn it into this great mythology, which is like illustrated, which is described clearly in this book, which may well have been written with complete approval, actually, despite the protests to the contrary. Maybe because it was the 10th anniversary. Maybe they decided this is the time in the story to kill off the villain. Then we go into the epilogue, and in the next decade, in this decade coming, we have another plan for you. 9/11 is now just a part of history, and we're going to leave it behind. And I think that's clearly happened. I mean, the whole war on terror thing, the neocons kind of like fell into decline. The United States itself is sort of it's become just one pole in a multipolar world, and there's a new plan now for how to control the world's population in this century with climate change, with the C-19, you know what, and the Israel Gaza thing, Ukraine, Russia, all these different current things that really, I think it's that song by Dick Jackson, 9/11 is just another part of history. Okay, I'm just going to come over to the studio to give you a bit of extra information, as always. And I should point out, first of all, there was a picture section in the book here, which gives you details of, oops, if it can't make it without disappearing, of the raid. You see there? There's various pictures. There's a picture section in the book. However, you may want to know a little bit more about where this was going on. Now, the Osama bin Laden compound is actually in a place called Abbottabad, like I said, in Bilal town, and I'll just show you where that is on Google Earth. It actually is mentioned on there, and it's here. It says here Memorial Complex. I mean, it says Memorial there, but it's this location here. It's quite prominent here in Abbottabad in Pakistan. Like I say, it's in this is a large town or city here, and Bilal town is a district here in the middle of it. Now you can see this is just it's ruined. It's actually been demolished. It's on. If you want to go there, it's on Nazim Street. There's no street views at all. No street views allowed at all. But it is on Nazim Street in Abbottabad, and apparently it was demolished so it wouldn't become some kind of memorial, some kind of place of pilgrimage. Yeah, you wouldn't want to become some kind of place of pilgrimage. But this is a CIA photo. This is a CIA reconnaissance drone footage of the whole thing. Where is it? Here we are. That's what it looked like at the time, which is very interesting. Again, in the location here, that's where Abbottabad is. Well, it's gone now, but you can see it there, the red dot there. And this is what it looked like there. You see. Bin Laden was on the top floor of this main building. One of his associates was in this little outhouse here. The SEALs built up an entire mock-up of this so they could see it. And this is it before it was built. And it was built quite recently, I think. It was built only a few years before Bin Laden moved in. And here is a photograph of it before it was demolished here in Abbottabad. Yeah. There we go. There's another one. This was shortly after the raid. A lot of people came to look at it. They had to have this complete unit of the SEALs, complete with a with a dog to keep people away, to keep sightseers away. And indeed, something did happen that night. I mean, despite obviously there's something very dubious about this whole story, but something did happen at that location that night, because there were various tweets and other social media posts from people in the area who said, "Why are there helicopters hovering over our roofs? Where did they come from?" There was too many. That wasn't fake. Helicopters indeed were sent to that building that night. Now, this doesn't mean the entire story in No Easy Day is true. It doesn't mean this book is the truth about what happened to Bin Laden.
It's it's one of these interesting things that was may have been done to make it more persuasive. I don't know if indeed, as I suspect, the official story is fake. But yeah, it seems so. The body's gone, the building's gone. There's no way to verify independently anything about this at all. None. We know it's Bin Laden apparently because the FBI did manage to get the DNA specimens back to Washington, have them analysed. I've just been reading the Wikipedia page about it. But if for any reason those DNA retrievals hadn't been successful, there's nothing you do because the body's at the bottom of the sea. There's actually a description of his burial. According to US officials, Bin Laden was buried at sea, and it describes how they managed to find a crew member who's qualified to do it. Preparations began about 10 a.m. local time, which is like how long? That was just literally hours after the end of the raid. Burial was completed at 11 a.m. The body was washed, wrapped in a white sheet, and placed in a weighted plastic bag. An officer read prepared religious remarks, translated into Arabic by a native speaker. Then Bin Laden's body was placed on a flat board. The board was tilted upwards, and the body slid off into the sea. This is a tradition. You've seen burials at sea before. Someone called Leon Panetta, who I believe is a journalist. I know that name. I'm familiar with that name. Oh, no, he's not. He's an American. He was a government official. He said Bin Laden's body was given final prayers, placed in a black bag, loaded with 300 pounds of iron chains to ensure that it would sink, and then the body bag was placed on a white table at the rail of the ship. The table was tipped and the body bag slid into the sea. Yeah. So there you go. That's apparently what happened. But no photographs. None. No photographs of the body, despite the fact, like I said, he lost a part of his skull. It would have been possible to make the body at least cosmetic for the media. I know this because being a hospital porter, I had to deal with people who dealt with dead bodies, undertakers, morticians, people like that. They have ways and means of making a body look at least presentable, at least not so it won't freak people out. And that never happened. No photographs of the body, no photographs of the funeral, no independent confirmation at all that anything happened here. Nothing. We were just told he was dead. That's it.
But we have to ask other questions. Why have the members of SEAL Team 6 been so accident prone? Well, I think about 40 of them were killed in one go, actually, when a helicopter was shot down in Afghanistan. And funny enough, the father of one of them is campaigning because he believes that there's a cover-up over the death of his son, who was one of the men on that helicopter. And there is indeed, although I don't think it's the way he thinks, because he believes that the Taliban actually infiltrated the Afghan National Army, and then in other words, it was an inside job. Well, it was an inside job, I think, but not quite the way he thinks. I don't think it was the Taliban who did it. One of them got killed in a car crash. One was killed on a parachute jump. He was an amateur parachutist. This wasn't on a mission or training. He was just doing it in his own time. He pulled the string and the parachute didn't open. Pulled the other one. Emergency chute didn't open. There have been several other examples. It seems that the members of SEAL Team 6 do seem, you know, I mean, I hope you can almost see the vultures circling. And you could put that down to a coincidence. I don't know. I tend not to believe in coincidences in this business. So, no easy day. As I said, I did tell you I was going to review this book, and I recommended you read it beforehand. If I'd read it now, it's interesting to read. And also do remember you are supporting service charities, because the author says he's donating the royalties to service charities. But really, it reads very much like a fictional military thriller. That's how it feels to me when I read it, and maybe that's all it is. Thank you for watching Hapanmo TV. Hospital Porters, pride and dignity, stop the New World Order.